Preview. Preview.
Journalists showed the work of Ukrainian drones, Lyut, on enemy warehouses with Iranian missiles. American journalists showed footage of the work of the Ukrainian intelligence unit using the An-196 inches Lyut, long-range drone. These UAVs recently hit a warehouse in the Kotlebany region of the Russian Federation that housed Iranian missiles. This is reported by CNN. The publication of the American mass media indicates that exclusive access was obtained to one of the Ukrainian units of long-range drones, which is part of the GUR of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Its members call themselves the Long-Range UAV Unit. But they talked about the use of Lyut drones with a length of about 4 meters and a wingspan of 7 meters. The commander of the GUR with the call sign, Serge, and the commander of the Vector unit talked to the journalists. This happened when the unit was preparing to launch more than 100 drones on the night of September 29 towards the Russian Federation. According to Serge, he has personally overseen more than 500 long-range drone attacks on Russian territory since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. According to Ukrainian intelligence officers, their target was the enemy's munitions depot, namely the train cars inside the depot, loaded with recently delivered Iranian missiles. This warehouse is located on the outskirts of the village of Kotlebyn in the Volgograd region of Russia. Soldiers of the GUR in a conversation with representatives of the American mass media noted that they managed to find windows in Russian air defense during drone attack operations. Each drone will be programmed to more than 1,000 different waypoints to avoid complex Russian air defense systems. As Vector said, smaller drones are critical to the success of any mission. The goal is to overcome air defenses and divert Russian fire from the Furious, which often carries a payload of up to 250 kilograms. Features of drone attacks. In order to deceive Russian radars, strips of metal foil are attached to the wings. Vector also said that their targets during drone strikes are exclusively military objects. At the same time, in other regions of Ukraine, approximately 80 other employees of the GUR are preparing for the launch of 90 other UAVs. Not all of these UAVs are Lyut. About 30% of all drones that are launched will perform decoy missions, Serge told journalists. The attack on the warehouse in Kotlebyn and its consequences. The drones were programmed to fly at a distance of about 725 meters to 885 meters, and the Furious was the main one, intended to strike the ammunition depot in Kotlebyn. Ukrainian intelligence officers said that the success of the mission was monitored in 3 ways: through ground intelligence, messages in Russian Telegram groups and, later, analysis using satellite technology. Only after evaluating all 3 methods can the mission be considered successful or not. Already after the attack, the initial satellite images of the Kotlebyn ammunition depot show scorched fields as a result of burning grass. At first it seemed that there was no evidence of strong explosions inside. However, the HER shared a video from the depot area with CNN. And it is noted that CNN journalists were able to independently review and verify aspects of the video without blurring to verify authenticity. A defense intelligence source told CNN that their data confirmed that the explosions inside the depot in the Kotlebany area were powerful. A time-lapse video from CNN showed 11 explosions occurring over a 56-minute period between 2:22 a.m. and 3:18 a.m., the exact time Ukrainian drones were supposed to land on targets. American journalists were also able to independently verify through sources that there was a direct hit on the object. A later Maxar Technologies satellite image showed less miscellaneous debris in the vicinity, which may indicate that the Russian military had cleared the site, but the building itself was heavily damaged. The Ukrainian side emphasizes that the mission to destroy missiles delivered by Iran was successful. Earlier, on the night of September 27, the colonel of the armed forces of the Russian Federation Alexei Kolomaitsev was eliminated in the Moscow region. He trained drone operators and managed a specialized center. In Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine eliminated the Russian drone operator Anton Vidra with the call sign, Mossad. At one time, the occupier served in the Israeli army and could get a passport of an Israeli citizen, but he decided to die for Russia in Ukraine. The armed forces of Ukraine eliminated more than 1,400 invaders and 51 artillery systems in a day. The General Staff updated information on Russian losses in the war. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the defense forces have neutralized more than 674,000 invaders, more than 19.5 thousand artillery systems and 9,014 tanks. This is reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. The total combat losses of the Russians from 24 February 22 to 17 October 24 approximately amounted to: personnel, about 674,270 plus 1,420 people. Tanks 9,014 plus 17 units. Armored combat vehicles 18,002 plus 33 units. Artillery systems 19,510 plus 51 units. RSZV 1,232 plus 1 units. Air defense equipment 978 units. Aircraft 369 units. Helicopters 329 units. UAVs of the operational tactical level 17,104 plus 54 units. Cruise missiles 2,620 plus 8 units. Ships boats 28 units. Submarines 1 unit. Automotive equipment and tank trucks 26,815 plus 83 units. Special equipment 3,446 plus 5 units. The data is being verified. Earlier, we wrote that the forces of the 3rd Assault Brigade conducted a successful counteroffensive in the Kharkiv region. The day before, on October 16, we reported that Ukrainian intelligence officers had conducted a successful operation in the Liptsy district of the Kharkiv region. Almost a regiment of Russian invaders was eliminated there. The enemy hit the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region. Some consumers are without electricity. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region, as a result of which some subscribers were left without electricity. This was reported by the head of OVA Vitaly Kim in Telegram. The enemy attacked the energy infrastructure, as a result of which there is a blackout of subscribers. Energy companies have already healed most of the consumers. The work continues. There are no casualties, the report says. The head of the OVA added that air defense was working at night, but he promised to tell the details later. On the evening of October 16, Russian troops launched several groups of attack drones into the territory of Ukraine. An air alert sounded in most areas. The sounds of explosions were heard in the Kyiv region. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. Earlier, on one of the directions in the Donetsk region, the artillery of the Chervona Kalina Brigade was able to destroy the Russian Grad rocket salvo system with full ammunition from the first shot. And Ukrainian scouts conducted a successful operation in the Liptsiv district of the Kharkiv region. Explosions rang out in the Kyiv region at night. Air defense forces shot down enemy drones. The sounds of explosions were heard in the Kyiv region. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. This is reported by Kyiv OVA. The air alert continues. We ask everyone to stay in shelters. Air defense is working in the region, the message says. At 4:12 an air alert was sounded in the Kyiv region. We will remind that the alarm was announced in the region at 1941 on Wednesday, October 16. Thus, the air alert in the Kyiv region lasted continuously for about 8.5 hours. We will remind you that this night the Russians are again attacking Ukraine on a large scale with Shahed-type drones. An air alert has been declared in most regions of the country. In Kyiv, for the first time, the alarm due to a drone attack on the city was announced around 2 a.m. For the second time during the night, the alarm sounded in the capital at 3:30. Explosions were heard in the city. Air defense forces were working on, shocked, over certain areas. Earlier, on one of the directions in the Donetsk region, the artillery of the Chervona Kalina Brigade was able to destroy the Russian Grad rocket salvo system with full ammunition from the first shot. And Ukrainian scouts conducted a successful operation in the Liptsiv district of the Kharkiv region. Experts believe that Putin's strategy of prolonging the war may not work. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin's current theory of victory is aimed at prolonging the war and is based on the belief that his army can win a war of attrition. However, these plans may suffer a crushing defeat. This was reported by the Institute for the Study of War (ISW). It is noted that Putin and the Russian military command obliged the Russian military to conduct offensive actions along the front line in the east and northeast of Ukraine throughout the year. This campaign is designed to exhaust the armed forces and prevent them from accumulating the necessary manpower and material and technical means to conduct counteroffensive operations. Putin and the Russian military command probably consider maintaining the initiative in the entire theater of operations as a strategic priority. They have demonstrated their tolerance for prolonged offensive operations, resulting in a gradual, creeping advance far from the intended operational objectives, the report said. ISW also noted that the Russian military is currently trying to eliminate the threat from the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kursk region and at the same time continues offensive pressure in the east of Ukraine, pursuing its long-standing operational goals. The institute's analysts are convinced that the intensified offensive operation of the Russian military in the summer of 2024 to capture the city of Pokrovsk and reduce the wider Ukrainian presence in the west of the Donetsk region is likely to reach its climax in the coming months. At the same time, analysts predict that despite the state of combat capability of the Russian troops, the Russian military command will likely continue to involve its army in general strategic efforts aimed at maintaining the initiative in the entire theater of operations and exhausting the armed forces long before this operational culmination. Putin's theory of victory is based on the fact that the troops of the Russian Federation will conduct successive offensive operations until infinity. However, these grueling assaults will probably deteriorate the state of Russian manpower and equipment so much that Russian troops will be forced to reduce the pace of the offensive at least in certain areas of the front. This will allow the armed forces to compete and probably seize the initiative on the battlefield in these territories, the report says. Analysts also suggest that medium and long-term limitations of Russia's military potential and military-industrial production will undermine the country's ability to sustain successive offensive operations aimed at prolonging the war and exhausting Ukraine. ISW observes a constant total increase in financial incentives offered by the Russian government for the conclusion of a military contract with the Ministry of Defense. This shows that Russia is running out of reserves of volunteers willing to serve and participate in the war. The Russian authorities are concerned that the current efforts to recruit volunteers are showing less and less results. But Putin, as before, seeks to avoid another partial mobilization draft of reservists against the background of problems with the formation of the armed forces, the report says. The institute does not rule out that Putin may conduct another wave of partial mobilization similar to the fall of 2022. However, it will most likely do so only under severe pressure or after the current crypto mobilization campaign fails miserably. Russian offensive operations in Ukraine led to significant technical losses, especially armored vehicles. And military industrial capacity probably won't be able to replace these losses in the medium to long term. Russia is currently relying on the restoration of a large but limited stockpile of Soviet-era equipment to replace significant losses in Ukraine. And these reserves are being depleted at an increasingly faster pace, the report says. ISW also recalled that Russia uses partnerships with North Korea and Iran to purchase ammunition and military equipment, and cooperates with China to purchase critical components for defense production. However, these international purchases will not be able to satisfy all of Russia's needs in material and technical means for the war in Ukraine. It seems that Putin is as reluctant to carry out a full-scale economic mobilization as he is to another wave of personnel mobilization. It remains unclear whether critical bottlenecks and worsening labor shortages will allow Russia to quickly and fully mobilize its economy to the level necessary for military operations, the ISW report notes. Earlier, on the night of September 27, the colonel of the armed forces of the Russian Federation Alexei Kolomaitsev was eliminated in the Moscow region. He trained drone operators and managed a specialized center. In Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine eliminated the Russian drone operator Anton Vidra with the call sign, Mossad. At one time, the occupier served in the Israeli army and could get a passport of an Israeli citizen, but he decided to die for Russia in Ukraine. The General Staff spoke about the number of clashes at the front. During the past 24 hours, 163 combat clashes were recorded in different directions of the front. There were 52 collisions in the Kharkiv direction. This was reported by the press service of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The enemy launched 2 missile strikes and carried out 64 airstrikes, dropping 98 guided air bombs (UABs) and also conducted 4,786 attacks, including 137 from rocket salvo systems. The most intense battles continued in the Kharkiv, Kupian, Lyman, Kramatorsk, Teresk, Pokrovsky, Kharkiv, Vremiv and Orikhiv directions. Defense forces of Ukraine successfully repelled numerous enemy assaults. In particular, there were 18 attacks in the Kupiansk direction, 52 in Kharkiv, and 15 in Pokrovsky. The Ukrainian aviation and missile forces carried out 14 strikes on areas where the enemy's manpower and equipment were concentrated, as well as on the ground control station of the occupiers, drones. The operational situation in the Dnieper direction remains stable, and no signs of the formation of enemy offensive groups have been detected in the Volyn and Politsk directions. The operation in the Kursk region continues. 21 airstrikes of the aggressor were recorded in the region. In particular, 32 guided air bombs were dropped. During the last day, from October 16 to 17, Russian troops lost more than 1,400 invaders and 17 tanks. Total losses of combat armored vehicles since the beginning of the full-scale invasion exceeded 18,000 units. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region, as a result of which some subscribers were left without electricity. The sounds of explosions were heard in the Kyiv region. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. The enemy launched 56 drones over Ukraine at night. There are hits on the infrastructure. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked Ukraine with 56 attack UAVs and unmanned aerial vehicles of an unknown type and the Kh-59 guided air missile. 22 enemy drones were destroyed, 27 were lost in location, 2 more headed towards Belarus, but there are also hits. This was reported by the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in Telegram. As a result of anti-aircraft combat, 22 enemy UAVs were shot down in the Sumy, Kyiv, Poltava, Chernihiv, Zhytomyr, Mykolaiv, Cherkasy, Odessa and Ternopil regions. 2 UAVs left the airspace in the direction of Belarus, 27 attack UAVs and unmanned UAVs of an unknown type were lost in location as a result of active countermeasures by the EU of the Defense Forces, the message reads. It is also reported that 5 strikes by UAVs on infrastructure facilities in the frontline areas were recorded. The invaders launched their rocket from the airspace of the Kursk region of the Russian Federation, and the drones were launched from the Russian cities of Kursk, Oryol and Primorsko-Akhtarsk. Aviation, anti-aircraft missile forces, electronic warfare units and mobile fire groups of the Air Force and Defense Forces of Ukraine were involved in repelling the attack. We also wrote that over the past day, October 16, the Russian aggressors lost more than 1,400 of their soldiers and 17 tanks. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region, as a result of which some subscribers were left without electricity. Explosions were heard in the Kyiv region today, October 17, at night. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. The Russians dropped explosives from a drone in the Dnipro district of Kherson. 1 person was injured. On the morning of October 17, the Russian military dropped explosives from a drone in the Dnipro district of Kherson, as a result of which a 42-year-old man was injured. This is reported by Kherson OVA. In the morning, the Russians attacked the Dnipro district of Kherson with a drone. A 42-year-old man received an explosive injury, arm and leg injuries due to the dropping of explosives from an unmanned aerial vehicle, the report says. The victim was taken to the hospital for medical assistance. During the last day, from October 16 to 17, Russian troops lost more than 1,400 invaders and 17 tanks. Total losses of combat armored vehicles since the beginning of the full-scale invasion exceeded 18,000 units. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region, as a result of which some subscribers were left without electricity. The sounds of explosions were heard in the Kyiv region. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. In Kyiv Oblast, a farm was damaged as a result of enemy shelling. On the night of October 17, Russian shelling damaged a farm in the Kyiv region during an 8-hour alert. This was reported in Kyiv OVA. At night, the enemy once again attacked the Kyiv region with BPLA. The alarm lasted more than 8 hours. Air defense forces were active in the region. Enemy targets have been destroyed, the administration said. There were no hits to critical or residential infrastructure. There are no casualties. As a result of falling fragments of downed enemy targets, a utility room caught fire in one of the farms. The fire has been extinguished. During the last day, from October 16 to 17, Russian troops lost more than 1,400 invaders and 17 tanks. Total losses of combat armored vehicles since the beginning of the full-scale invasion exceeded 18,000 units. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region, as a result of which some subscribers were left without electricity. The sounds of explosions were heard in the Kyiv region. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. Video. The armed forces showed footage of an attack on a training ground by Russian snipers. The Ukrainian military hit the training ground where Russian soldiers were stationed. Sniper training took place at the range. This was reported by the Zahid Operational Command. Fighters of the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade and the Black Forest Brigade struck. The defenders hit the training ground of the Russian occupiers in the south of Ukraine. As a result of the attack, the armed forces of the Russian Federation destroyed the soldiers of the Russian army who were undergoing sniper training. We will remind that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the defense forces neutralized more than 674,000 invaders, more than 19.5 thousand artillery systems and 9,014 tanks. Earlier, we wrote that the forces of the 3rd Assault Brigade conducted a successful counteroffensive in the Kharkiv region. The day before, on October 16, we reported that Ukrainian intelligence officers had conducted a successful operation in the Liptsy district of the Kharkiv region. Almost a regiment of Russian invaders was eliminated there. The Air Force showed the work of IRIS-T. The Air Force shared footage of the IRIS-T anti-aircraft missile system, which helps Ukrainian air defense to shoot down the most difficult enemy targets. The corresponding video was posted by the Air Force Command on social networks. It is noted that NASAMS and IRIS-T are the first Western medium-range anti-aircraft missile systems that began to protect Ukraine's critical infrastructure from massive enemy attacks. Today, the Air Force has a lot of NASAMS and IRIS-T batteries, which are gradually entering service and are gradually replacing morally and physically outdated Soviet-made air defense systems. IRIS-T is a high-quality German system capable of destroying all aerodynamic targets within a radius of up to 40 kilometers. This is the most modern anti-aircraft missile system in the Air Force, the statement said. Fighting on IRIS-T is a pleasure, the anti-aircraft fighters admit. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked Ukraine with 56 attack UAVs and unmanned aerial vehicles of an unknown type and the Kh-59 guided air missile. 22 enemy drones were destroyed, 27 were lost in location, 2 more headed towards Belarus, but there are also hits. We also wrote that over the past day, October 16, the Russian aggressors lost more than 1,400 of their soldiers and 17 tanks. On the night of October 17, Russian troops attacked the energy infrastructure in the Mykolaiv region, as a result of which some subscribers were left without electricity. Explosions were heard in the Kyiv region today, October 17, at night. Air defense forces destroyed the Russian, shocked. A new camp for Russian prisoners was opened in Ukraine. In Ukraine, a new camp for Russian prisoners of war was opened, Center 5 inches, in which special conditions have been created for keeping wounded prisoners of war. This was reported by the press service of the State Project of the Coordination Headquarters on the Treatment of Prisoners of War, I Want to Live. Since the number of Russians who are surrendered to the armed forces every month significantly exceeds the number of those who are returned by Russia within the framework of exchanges, the places of detention of prisoners of war in Ukraine are filling up very quickly, the report says. The conditions in the camp meet all the requirements of international humanitarian law: separate sleeping places, 3 hot meals, showers with hot water, access to medical care. There are a lot of such Russian prisoners of war in Ukraine, and the Russian side deliberately refuses to return disabled and sick people in particular. For 2.5 years, Russia has refused to comply with the requirements of the Geneva Conventions and is blocking the creation of mixed medical commissions for the repatriation of the wounded and sick, the message states. https://u2.be/60h53sgiv-y. Ukraine maintains maximum possible openness in matters of treatment of prisoners of war. Therefore, various international observers and mass media can visit Center 5 and other places where Russian prisoners are held. We will remind that Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roskina, whose death became known recently, was held by the Russians in pre-trial detention center number 2 in the city of Taganrog, Rostov region of the Russian Federation. Former prisoners say that this isolator is known for the most brutal torture. The commander of the special unit, Akhmet Apti Aladinov, said that there is no need to exchange Chechens captured in Kursk. Several dozen occupiers surrendered during a special operation of the defense forces in the north of Kharkiv region. During the operation north of Liptsi in the Kharkiv region, the defense forces of Ukraine captured at least 20 Russian soldiers, among whom were the fighters of the Wagner PMK, who had previously participated in battles in the Bakhmut direction. On October 17, the head of the planning department of the 13th Brigade of Operational Assignment, Charter, Anton Bayev told about this. According to Bayev, the number of prisoners may reach more than 20 or 30 people. After interrogations, it turned out that among those captured were both mobilized Russians with minimal training and experienced military personnel, including Wagnerians. The operation was the result of joint actions with units of the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine, which were engaged in clearing Russian positions and moving forward, while Chartia provided artillery support and cover with means of radio-electronic warfare. Bayev emphasized that the specifics of the operation were difficult due to the complex topography of the area and the Russians' lack of classic trenches. Their shelters consisted of deep, isolated holes, located opposite each other every 5 to 7 meters. Currently, the units of the Charter continue to be entrenched in the vacated positions, increasing the buffer zone between the Ukrainian and Russian forces. Earlier we wrote that Ukraine's attacks on the territory of Crimea occupied by Russia are increasingly reducing the military potential of the peninsula. Among the affected objects are airfields, command centers, oil depots and the Crimean Bridge. We will also remind you that the Ukrainian military hit the training ground where Russian soldiers were stationed. Sniper training took place at the range. The occupiers announced the nationalization of Sevastopolgaz. The Russian authorities of the occupied Sevastopol decided to nationalize the enterprise, Sevastopolgaz. This was announced by the appointed head of the Russian city Mikhailo Razvozhayev in his Telegram channel. This is reported by the RFE-RL project, Crimea. Really. This morning, at a closed-door meeting of the government, a decision was made to transfer the property of Ukrainian oligarchs, PJSC Sevastopolgaz, into state ownership, he said. According to Razvozhayev, the enterprise has now appointed a temporary administration from among the employees of Sevastopolgaz, formed by the Russian government of the city. The Russian official personally thanked the director of the FSB of Russia Alexander Bortnikov and the prosecutor general of Russia Igor Krasnov, as well as the Russian law enforcement agencies of Sevastopol and Crimea for their assistance. Crimean Telegram channels report that in the morning the building of Sevastopolgaz was surrounded by the security forces of the Russian Federation, and searches continued there. It will be recalled that the High Anti-Corruption Court supported the lawsuit of the Ministry of Justice and nationalized the assets of sanctioned Russian oligarchs. We are talking about 6 companies that are part of the Polyplastic Group industrial conglomerate. Earlier we wrote that the Ministry of Justice wants to confiscate the assets of the co-owners of the Russian USM Group located in Ukraine. And the Russian Uzbek metallurgical and telecommunications tycoon Alisher Usmanov and former Russian Deputy Prime Minister Igor Shuvalov remained on the list of European Union sanctions. The Higher Anti-Corruption Court decided to seize the assets of Russian oligarch Alisher Usmanov in favor of Ukraine. We are talking about assets worth more than 2 billion hryvnias. The occupiers released a smoke screen and hid the Crimean Bridge. The Russian occupiers reported on the work of air defense in Crimea and claimed that the Crimea Bridge was hidden under a smoke screen. According to information from the Crimean Wind Telegram channel, on Thursday, October 17, an alleged missile threat was announced on the peninsula. As a result, a siren sounded, and the occupiers reported the activity of air defense in Sevastopol. It also became known that traffic on the Crimean Bridge was temporarily blocked due to the alarm, and the bridge itself was covered with a smoke screen. As usual, Russian sources announced a possible missile attack on the bridge, in the vicinity of which explosions were heard. Earlier we wrote that Ukraine's attacks on the territory of Crimea occupied by Russia are increasingly reducing the military potential of the peninsula. Among the affected objects are airfields, command centers, oil depots and the Crimean Bridge. We will also remind you that the Russian occupiers are covering the Crimean Bridge with special barricades made of plastic containers. Moreover, barrels are used for this, in which the Russian Federation buys cucumbers in India.